Think we are once again live. Just a second. Hello. Is the chat working fine? Yeah. There has been a notice streaming के issues आ रहे हैं. It's still lagging a lot. Yeah, it's still lagging a lot. If I can turn off the video, I think it could be a much better thing. Maybe this feature. Just trying to see if there's an option I can stop the video. Maybe. Anyways, so yeah. So, welcome back to the stream once again. I had to take a small pause initially. I had a couple of meetings to attend. So, yeah, coming back to the issue once again. If I can just check the stream. So, yeah, the audio is fine. Just you can please bear with the bit of a lag in the video. So, I think the background has been covered for now. The how the build-up has been happening about when it comes to the case of the Iran issue, and now seeing the way the thing have been happening right now. So, like I said, the mention of oil first of all. So, nearly 20% of the globe's oil is moved from this location. That's a lot of majority when it comes to the case of oil moving about. This particular area of the Gulf of Oman, it nearly shows a 20% of the world's majority being used here. If I have to quote the exact figures, even when it comes to the case of uh, the size of this particular state of Hormuz. So, if I can give you the exact the context here, it's at its shallow end, just 39 kilometers wide. So, if any particular chaos comes about, or maybe some extra things are being, I would say, built up in this particular area by the Iran, it leads to some issues when it comes to the case of the travels and the overall movement of the oils across the strait. So that's the first thing when we discuss about this particular area. Another key thing is Dubai being served as one of the biggest airport hangar nowadays. So that being said, it leads to a lot of issue when it comes to the overall trade being, I would say, sorry, the traffic movement across the board coming about. So that's the initial context for the case of the oil, and going a bit of a more context here. So there was this particular statement happening about that even if UAE starts to use the underwater pipes, it would just serve nearly 9% of the requirements, amounting to nearly 9 million metric tons. If I have to quote the exact uh, event here, so it's that basically, even at the full utilization of the underwater pipelines, 9% of the global demand, basically 9 million barrels per day, that's still a big issue because the majority of the oil would get stuck there only. That's the particular issue on this particular war, that choke point choke point of Strait of Hormuz is leading to economic tussle and turmoil. That's the initial build-up for this particular case. If I have to now account for the case of India, so like I mentioned, India's 50% nearly oil imports are coming from this area. That's nearly 1.25 something of million barrels per day as compared to India's overall 2.5 to 2.7 million barrels procurement across the globe. That's the case for India, India being the third largest consumer of crude oil with nearly 88% of dependence to the import. So that's the big issue which India currently faces. As of now, the strategic reserves which we have, those are gonna last for just 10 days when it comes to the case of the public aspect, the government maintained, and when it comes to the case of the private sector, it might get expanded till 2 months. So that's still a big of a problematic issue. That's the initial, I would say, the way this particular issue has been expanding. Oil is just one particular element. If I try to go a much broader here, so India nearly imports 70% of its LNG and 80 to 85% of its LPG from Strait of Hormuz. That's where I feel this issue becomes a very big trouble for India in the long run. Initially, we are trying, I would say, not to comment much on this particular issue. As of now, like I said, India has once again maintained its ambivalent stance, quoting attacks on UAE as wrong. Then later on, we mentioned that what has happened in Iran, the killing, is wrong. So if I see this particular issue right now, how the thing has been evolving about, because just I mentioned the case of oil, so I thought that yeah, I can give a bit of a context and then proceed ahead. So as of now, US is continuously bombing Iran. Yesterday itself, there was the news around the black rain pouring down on Iran because some of the key tankers and oil tankers have been attacked by USA. That has led to an update from even the WHO, quoting that this particular incident of black rain falling because of the oil tanker being impacted, it's going to be a big risk for the health of the people here. Israel and USA have been continuously bombing Iran. We saw the case of 150 school children going girls being killed here. That's some big issue that's been developing. And like I mentioned, see, technically, the Iran Revolution Guard Corps, the IRGC, they have their stake when it comes to protecting the revolution. And now the head is dead. So the rest of the body now is going for a turmoil because the incidents and the avenues around the warlords era is once again starting to build up slowly and slowly, where there have been reports of IRGC factions occupying their particular area of zone of sense and trying to concentrate the power and then attacking to the rest of the world. The attacks have been happening about in UAE, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and even towards Israel is happening about on the issue of Turkey. So yeah, building upon slowly and slowly to the case now. Uh, why, firstly, Iran is bombing the other Arab states and the Gulf region? So Iran is wishing to pull the entire region in this particular war, firstly, because if the entire region gets pulled down in this war, they would try to, I would say, pressurize or even coerce USA then to stop these particular attacks happening about, so that overall a peace can be established in this particular area. That's the avenue why I feel the attacks on the Saudi Arabia's embassy of USA in Saudi Arabia, the attacks on UAE, the Qatar, and even an attempt attack on Turkey. I'm going to discuss Turkey in a bit while. That's something which has been building up right now. As now the country's specific attacks have been happening about the Ras Tamura of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest oil company region in the region, and the Ras Tamura Last Rafan of Qatar, the biggest in gas company. These particular have been shut down because they have been attacked, and that's where the issue of oil and this issue going beyond the zone of US, Iran, and Israel has been expanding about. Mentioning the case of Turkey, the biggest issue which I feel here right now is if a blatant attack happens on Turkey, the Article 5 of the NATO can be invoked here. So, sorry to go a bit of a tangent here. Turkey, Article 5 uh, issue. So, Turkey, like I mentioned, Turkey is part of the NATO, and NATO has something called the Article 5 like security regime. Sorry, Article 5, which has the avenue of security arrangements. So it basically states that if a particular NATO member country is attacked by any other country, that would amount to a war against the rest of the NATO countries also. So if any or other missile lands on Turkey, full-scale war could be, I would say, initiated against the NATO, which USA might be looking towards to drag the rest of the European countries also. That's the reason why I feel that when initially Iran had tried to bomb the region around Turkey, NATO's own drones, sorry, own defense missile system had tried to counter that missile. And when that had been breached, Turkey had countered well enough that missile so that the war cannot go much and much more beyond the ongoing issues. Or that's where I feel this particular issue seems to expand across the border. Dubai's Palm hotels were attacked. Embassies in Saudi Arabia has been attacked. Kuwait and Oman has seen the brunt. Qatar has seen the brunt. But that's how this particular issue has been evolving about. Coming to the case of how this impacts India and also the overall world. So one of the key things when it comes to the case of India in this region is our diaspora. We have nearly 10 million Indians in this region, with 38% of remittances across the globe coming from here. 38% remittances of India. That's some big issue which we can and see, and why India was trying its level best to be in touch with the bureaucrats and the leaders of the said country where the attacks are happening, so that the safety and security of the Indians can be ensured. So that's the initial case for India. Uh, like I mentioned, the case of oil. Every $1 increase in the case of the oil, it would lead to a 1.8 to a $2 billion dollar India's rise in, I would say, costs when it comes to the case of paying for the oil coming from Iran. Sorry, the Middle East area, the Hormuz Strait area. But that's some big issue which India has. For the case of oil and the crude, like I mentioned, we have strategic reserves. Well, uh, we have basically, let me show you the map. It's somewhere in the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu region where we have the three strategic reserves of India. Yeah, here's the India's strategic reserves. Here I can attach this particular map there for the reference. Why is it not working fine? Just a second. Yeah, it's loaded now. So I can copy this particular image here. Yeah. So here we see the three strategic reserves of India in the Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh region, the Mangalore, Karnataka, and the Padur, Karnataka region. These three particular regions are sufficiently been enough for 10 to 12 days of oil reserves for right now. And if we include the part of the India's private sector companies, uh, it can touch towards 2 months the overall presence. Bit of this later on, and I would discuss the case of essential commodity acts also. So yeah, anyways, this is the way thing has been happening about when it comes to the case of India strategic reserves. Another key thing to mention here is with regards to LPG, we don't have such a buffer, not for LPG. What we see that is that LPG flows more logistically sensitive to disruptions. as we have thinner structural buffers. That's the case for LPG's issue and the issue regarding the case of oil. Going on further ahead, how this particular issue has been evolving about and how the rest of the world is slowly and steadily getting, I would say, entangled here. So the main thing right now that we see is how this has started to impact the global economy. Like I mentioned, the case of Ras Noor and Las Lafa, that's something as a big issue happening about. As of now, things which have been happening about the Brent crude oil had topped initially nearly $120 per barrel, and that's a big issue as compared to even the time when the COVID crisis or the Russia-Ukraine war as an issue was building about. That's something is a big of an issue, and a key thing to notice here is oil price is comparatively lesser than the gas price, like I mentioned, because it's much easier to store oil as compared to the gas being stored. That's the reason why the gas prices have been shooting up like anything as compared to oil. So that's something as a big issue. And overall, also, the entire world is at a particular situation where the oil supply is much more than the demand overall. So that's something which helps to ensure that the prices are contained for the oil. But the case of gas prices, that's something which has impacted a lot. So another key thing to mention here is that this particular issue which we are seeing about, it's much more beyond oil. Industries like fertilizer, that's something which is facing the brunt. Helium, one third of the world's helium nearly comes from Qatar, and helium is used in MRI machines and even the semiconductors and the superconductors. So that's something of a big issue which the world can face. Even the sulfur, which is then made in H2SO4 and used in explosive, world's quarter, I would say nearly, the sulfur comes from the Middle East area. So that's something. What are the sulfur from here? That's another big issue which happens about. Not only that, other particular products, kerosene, that also goes for an issue. Construction activities in the case of India, we import limestone and gypsum from here. That's something it's further which is adding on to India's, I would say, overall issue. So this even has went on to impact the ceramic industry of India. India being one of the second largest when it comes to the case of manufacturing industries. That's the area where I feel that this has gone more beyond the initial oil revenue, and it has started to impact the overall economy much and more than what we could have expected. So this is a bit of a tangent for the case of economy because I think I mentioned it earlier on, so I thought maybe I can if quickly mention the case of post background, the oil issue, and the economy in turmoil. So yeah, now coming back once again to this particular issue of war and what can we expect from this particular issue happening about. So coming back to the foreshadow which I had made in the initial run, I feel the biggest victor here is, like I mentioned, the way back in the 1980 to 88 era when the Iran-Iraq war was happening and Kuwait-backed ship used to take help of USA's flag on their tankers and then move across the Strait of Hormuz. A similar thing now appears when companies are resorting towards the case of China. They're using Chinese flag to cross the Strait of Hormuz to avoid any repercussions. Well, that's one element which I feel that it's leading to destabilizing the region once again more than it already had. And the one who is picking up the scrapes, picking up scrapes is none other than China. That's a big problematic issue which I personally see. building up in this area. Even Iran gets good support from China. There has been reports that the cluster bombs being used by Iran right now, they have been provided by China itself. Coming to the way the military operations has been happening about. So the thing here is Iran has a lot of drones, the Shaheen drones which they mentioned. They have huge quantity of those. Last year, when that particular issue had evolved between the Israel and Iran, the 6 days of chaos happening about at that time, USA was that not much prepared for a long war at that time, and because at that time very much the Hezbollah powers in the Lebanon area, the Houthis in the Yemen, and then also the case of uh, Hamas being active. The Wall Street Journal had quoted a particular statement where they mentioned that Iran, and I would say even the case of the excess of resistance combined, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and the Hamas, they have sufficient resources to very much well counter the issues regarding the missiles being dropped by uh, Israel and USA. That's something people are still claiming that it's still existent because it has been reported that Iran has huge number of arsenal when it comes to the case of drones, the Shine drones which they have, and that can be used to carry out continuous bombarding across this particular region. And we are seeing this happening about Oman has been hit, Saudi has been hit, UAE has been hit, Qatar, Ras Laffan has been hit, Ras Tanura and Saudi Arabia. And this particular issue starting to go much and more beyond this particular issue started. What has happened, I would say, is unfortunate once again in this region when countries are trying to see a stabilizing in. Mr. Shekhar Gupta from the print, he quoted that this was an act of bad faith by the Western powers which happened here. If I even include the case of the Iranian warship, so three Iranian warships were basically part of the Milan exercise which was taking place in India, and this was before the issue being started about. So after the exercise was over, they were trying to once again go back to their home base. But seeing this particular issue, they knew an issue would come about. So one particular ship docked in Sri Lanka, one docked in India. But the third one, it thought that maybe if it can stay somewhere around here in the open waters, it might be safe instead of going to the home. However, like I mentioned back then, in the previous video, also the case of submarines. Submarine can be found anywhere and it can just come out from anywhere and attack. That's where the element of Iran's uh, ship being sink by USA using torpedoes that came about. It was an unfortunate incident because it's a rare sight when it comes of torpedoes being used like that, and in the open sea, a particular I would say ship which was unarmed. There's a basic convention when it comes to the case of war that unmanned people should not be attacked. However, this particular incident happened, so it was an unfortunate incident to take place. India, Sri Lanka then immediately tried to offer help to the crew. So yeah, that's the initial issue. Coming back to the case of trade once again, yes, Iran has said that India can access this particular area. The ships can move out, but the crews and overall the I would say companies are scared right now. Even the insurance companies, they have I would say availed of the war time I would say payments, or that adds to trouble of who is going to take the security risk travel in this area. Coming back to the once again the issue of this particular war, Russian oil is very much in demand. Russian oil sits in the Arabian Sea right now in its shipments and bases, and as the issue was expanding, India is looking for an opportunity. Mr. Trump was the first one to quote that India is now allowed to take a trade from India. However, Russia went on to quote and India went on to quote that we were doing it at our own end. That's where I feel that once again the issues and trouble between this broader region and the way things have been developing in the overall US administration scenes to happen about. I feel this mess could have been very much avoided because at the start of this particular war, Oman had mentioned Oman's capital city Muscat, where the negotiations were initially going about. A sort of a deal was started to build up between the two counterparts of Iran and USA. However, quoting the Indian Express article itself, it was said that this particular issue did not came because of a breakdown in events, but because of a breakthrough in the event. Maybe the things were set up in such a way that this issue had to be progressed ahead and the war would have to be happened about. And it's no, I would say, denying or face saving to anyone that at this particular time Israel has a good enough lobby in the US administration. So this seems to be the best perfect time for Israel to say counterattack Iran, because they know that they would have the full support of USA. But what I feel this sets the precedence is a bad faith once again, and this uh, keeps on, I would say, make a big issue for dragging the rest of the world. Right now, Iran has tried to counter USA by destroying the radars. Radar and UAE had destroyed the third one. A particular article was quoting that if the number of radars are being destroyed more and more, USA can very well ask Japan and South Korea, boss, please give your defense radars to us. And if those defense radars are brought here, China gets a free hand to attack Taiwan. So who's gonna come to save USA, Taiwan right now? USA being much well and occupied in the area of Iran, the power and strength being determined here itself. China would have a free hand. I think the biggest issue is we have yet not learned from the past. The Iraq issue, which happened about, it's a very famous, I would say, quote which has been given that regime change is very tough unless there are boots on ground, and if there are boots on ground, it will it might amount it might amount to further chaos, because the thing is, this is how things have happened in the past. When USA went in Iraq, guns blazing, Saddam Hussein was deposed, it further led to chaos of ISIS being expanded. Same happened in the case of Libya. When Gaddafi was removed, huge troubles happened in Libya, population perished, big issues happened. Same happened with the case of Afghanistan. At the end of the day, when the troops were removed, the country went for chaos. Taliban took over the entire territory of Afghanistan once again. Even in the case of Vietnam, Cambodia was destroyed by the orange gas which was used by USA. That's where I feel that neither regime change becomes feasible in the short run or even in the long run. And even if they have brought the boots on ground, it has led to worst situation. It's like to get to the best avenue and opportunity, the better and the good are compromised, and the worst situation happens. Yes, Iran has been had a problematic past. Last year, like I mentioned, the Green Revolution, basically the number of protests happening that have been expanding about. We saw this happening last year when the resistance and overall, I would say, the hatred and the way the protests had been happening about, it was at its peak. If USA really wanted to help, they could have helped at the time. Bombing a girls' school right now, that does not send a good message overall when it comes to the case of ideas of liberalism and equality. So that's where I feel that this particular issue. Just a second. हेलो भाई, पॉडकास्ट चल रहा है अभी देखो आधा घंटा दे, हाँ आधा घंटा दे करते बात, कोई नहीं कोई नहीं हाँ बस मेरे को 15 मिनट देते, अभी मैं लाइव ही था ठीक ठीक ठीक, ओके ओके ओके, कोई नहीं कोई नहीं, थैंक यू. Yeah, just a second. Apologies. When your best friend calls, you have to pick the call. So that's the thing. So yeah, coming back to the case. So, huh, the Iranian Revolution. So that particular issue which we saw recently happening about, that was built up to the events which have happened in the past, because the overall way the things have been happening about, the way people were being hurt, the democracy was being curbed, the Masa Amini case. The thing is, the anger keeps on boiling. What I feel the case of Iran is, Iran and why people were frustrated. I hope the spelling is right. Thing is, it's inflation and economy. See, it's a good thing to follow religion, It's a good thing to follow a leader. It's a good thing to have a particular policies and uh, ideology to have. But at the end of the day, you need food on the table. Any or every country which needs to survive, they need to provide food to people. A thing which has been happening about in Afghanistan, sorry, in the Iran since long has been the case of inflation. Inflation has been rising to its peak, and people was suffering a lot. That's where the initial resistance against the regime, the protests were building about. But coming back to the current state and the bombing which has happened, the bombings have happened about because the internal chaos has further expanded about. The citizens have been claiming that they are yet not having any say in the way the administration should look like, and they are fearful of the IRGC because the IRGC has been known in the past to curb the revolution a lot, and they fear taking down the streets right now. Mr. Trump had been mentioning that any or other leader, if might come, they would be willing to bring up a negotiation with them. But the thing is, people are not willing to bring up a negotiation with them. If I can quote the exact thing here in just a second. So there was this particular community, yes. So the overall, I would say, structure when it comes to the case of Iran, it's the Shia community, it's the Sunni community, it's the Christians, it's the Bahani community, it's the Azari. This is the second most prominent one, the 19 millions, and then we have the Kurds being the most politically active. Kurd is a topic I think which can cover up a huge entire video in itself. And then the area Baluch. So what USA was thinking that maybe someone from the Baluch community comes forward and proposes that we are going to form the government. Someone from the Kurd community is going to come forward and is going to propose, or maybe someone from within Iran itself would rise up and say that we can bring about. But the thing is, the second most prominent community, the Azeri community, they were integrated in the Islamic Republic, and despite the fact that they being the non-Persian ones, they still had, I would say, some good build-up and rapport with the overall Iranian regime. That's one big thing. Yes, like I mentioned, the way things have happened about the regime was not at all, I would say, peaceful against the rights. There has been multiple incidents of rights being curbed. So there was this Iranian studies historian with the name of Abbas Milani, which has mentioned that the leader of Iran, he was a very literate leader, very well read, very well versed when it comes to the case of geopolitics and thinking the way things happen about. But what happened is when you are someone who has dethroned an existing entity and you have also come about to that thing, somewhere or the other a fear of containing your power and then expanding your overall reach, that something remains. That's what I feel for this case of first of all the Iranian counterpart, the clerics here. And once again, coming back to the overall community, people are not much, I would say, appreciative of the way things have been happening about. Iranians have in the past countered Iraq very well, even when they were very weak at the time. So this is where I feel that this war can to a long, long time for now, because uh, as of now, no coherent leader as such can take over the position of the Iranian leaders, supreme leaders. Ayatollah Khamenei, he has been elected as the new supreme leader. He is someone who is not just from the theologist part also, but has also had an accord and relation and working with the Revolutionary Guard. So somewhere or the other, once again, a hardliner stance has come in the Iranian centerpiece. Mr. Trump is saying that he does not accept what is happening here. But the issue once again is people are not coming up ahead to step up or take a position because they didn't like somewhere or the other the way thing has happened about. And to conquer this particular area of Iran by just airstrike, it's not going to be possible, like I mentioned. And if the issue of boots on ground happened about, so it's once again going to be the same thing which happened in the case of Saddam Hussein time, and country would get devastated, and the issue would build up a lot. So that's what I feel for this particular war happening about. Why USA is doing this? The best question once again is oil. Venezuelan oil has been acquired. Now, if they can get hold of a regime or oil, they just dominate the overall oil chain and they get the best of the best resources. That's one big thing. And having a presence in Iran, they can also counter China. Even the way the Raisina dialogue recently happened in India, they commented even against India. A US top administration guy comes in India in the Raisina dialogue and says that we will not allow India to rise the way we allowed China to rise. So we are openly, I would say, in the crossfire here on this particular issue happening about. And that's where I feel that USA's presence in this Middle East is just gonna be problematic for us in the long run because we have had our own strategic investments here. Iran's Chabahar port is something which India had envisaged to counter the issue of Pakistan and China CPEC corridor to get a connection to Central Asia. Chabahar port sees a complete halt right now. The India Middle East economic corridor, no, I would say progress has happened there also. So these are the particular issues which I feel comes in the case of this ongoing troubles and the war expanding more and more. What can be further expected from this particular issue? So I feel that uh, until and unless I would say complete pullout once again from the case of USA happens, it would take time for the region to stabilize because to give confirmation to Iran that further attacks won't happen, somewhere or the other, assurances from US side or the Israel side has to come about. And I don't see this thing happening very well soon because the thing is, like I mentioned in the past, uh, this regional dynamics, this power game has been building since long. 1978, when Egypt was trying to build a rapport with the Israel, the Camp David Accord was signed. At the time, the Egypt president, Mr. Anwar Sadat, he was assassinated. He was not seen very well by the Egypt, I would say, public. So yeah, he was at the time uh, assassinated. Even in the 1993 Oslo Accords, the Israeli president he was also killed. That's where I feel that this issue goes much more beyond the overall region and peace, and more towards the hardlining aspect which the communities hold amongst each other. The hatred is lot. Israel sees this as the last opportunity which they have to ensure their, I would say, stability and their overall peace and overall safety in this particular area. So, yeah, I feel this is something it's gonna still take place. The Gaza issue is yet not solved, like I mentioned in the past. Uh, Here's the Gaza patti, which we say we can very much trace the Gaza Strip like this only. Rafah border here is close to the case of Egypt. As of now, some I think we have Gaza Strip movement of Israeli forces outside out of it. So, as per the peace plan which has been formulated between the regions, this is what had been proposed that firstly, the red region would be where the Israelis will pull out, then from the blue region, then from the yellow region, finally the case of Gaza once again being removed entirely from the case of Israeli presence. That would be happened about, and then the reformation would took place. But is this how the things would happen about? I don't see this particular happening right now because once again the issue has now shifted towards the Iran-Israel issue. Syria and Lebanon are facing the brunt. Lebanon's Hezbollah were trying to counter-attack Israel. Israel started a barrage of missiles towards Hezbollah in Lebanon is then getting impacted. Syria had once again the favor of USA, a president who initially was a UN designated terrorist, but now is the president. Yeah, that's something again once again a major issue. That's how the issues has been revolving around in the Middle East. Things are once again evolving. It's 13th March now, 13 days to this particular utter chaos. Prices of oil has been rising like anything. I was watching that particular video of Sky News would recommend if someone wishes to watch the ball by ball commentary. So Sky News had been bringing up some good Sky News good videos. If I can attach even one, could be helpful for everyone. So that's where I feel that this issue would keep on expanding until some big calamity like the one which happened in the 1980 to 88 war comes by. Because the thing is, no country is willing to back down right now. Mr. Trump has said that what they wanted to achieve, they've achieved, but what exactly is this particular achievement? Because technically, the issue is yet to solve. No specific regime has been finalized, or I would say removed as they wanted. So, what's something which they've achieved is something people can yet not understand. I'm attaching a link here for the Sky News channel. If someone is interested, I would highly recommend them to watch the video. It could be a good, I would say, update on the things which have been happening. Just a second. So yeah, I've attached that. That's the case for this particular war. India's stance, I think we have covered up. Issue of war is something which we have also touched. But I expect right now the issue will remain and pertain, and whoever wins, lose, or even a stalemate, the entire Middle East and the US presence will change a lot. Because this is, I would say, one of the biggest incident which has happened in the past after the Russia-Ukraine war. Oil prices have tanked up like anything. Even in the case of India, like I mentioned, India has invoked the Essential Commodity Act to ensure that the safety and security around oil and gas can be maintained, and the private consumption, private household consumption can be maintained, and the issues around and the commercial uh, diversion is being avoided. So this is gonna be a problematic thing for India and the rest of the world right now. I don't have much, I would say, facts more to share with you apart from the fact that the attacks by Iran has happened right now in Israel, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, Bahrain, UAE. There were incidents of US friendly fire attack happening in the case of Kuwait region. That's where I feel that this issue would still keep on going if there's some update which I get. Got that context of that also. Oh, just a second. Control of social. So this is social network analysis, which was used as an algorithm by the Israeli counterparts to track and finally uh, assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. This is the case which I feel for this particular issue. I think it's gonna be a while by which this particular issue gets resolved. If you are someone who wishes to read more on the case of tragic of history and the way this is beyond Iran and religion as a point, do check out this Medium link. If my article can be a good of a help, I would say, to get a context on how things have been evolving about. So I think apart from that, if there are some fill up topics more to be covered up, I can cover up them in the small video. That's thing I think so far covers the majority of the portion for the Israel issue. Just a second, if I can share this video. Sorry, article, copy link. So yeah, that's the case for the Iran West Asia turmoil happening about. I think it's still in development. Even if USA pulls out it's still a while till things will go for a, I would say, stability. So yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope I address the basic doubts when it comes to the case of this particular issue. Yeah, it took 1 hour 30 minutes to finally understand why Iran has been bombed by USA. So yeah, thanks a lot for sticking. And that's why Iran has been bombed by USA, explained in 1 hour 30 minutes. So yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for tuning in. So catch you soon. Bye bye. Take care.